That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, now that we have these rookies, guys like Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, I'm going to be so excited to go through, revisit our Cornerstone Dynasty wide receiver rankings. Now, last time we did this a little bit over a month ago, we had a lot of people kind of confused on what we were doing because we went through and looked at these second-year players and the first-year players. I'm going to make it simple for everyone, just like we did with running backs. If you're 23 years old or younger, you're on this list. Okay, so guys like CeeDee Lamb, even though they were drafted in 2020, he'll be on here. Someone like Treylon Burks, who is yet to be drafted, we're going to be ranking him here as well. But of course, before we do so, please make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, leave a comment, let me know how stupid I am with any ranking that you disagree with. Subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And lastly, if you want access to all our Dynasty rankings, not just our Cornerstone rankings, if you want to get in Dynasty leagues with this awesome community, if you want to get an in-depth podcast breaking down your Dynasty team, and you want to just join probably the best Dynasty Fantasy Football community there is, you can find those links to join our Patreon community down there in the description of the video, as well in the comment section. I'm sure most people know that by now. Let's just dive in. Let's go into these rankings. Let's lead it off with someone that's, of course, our Dynasty wide receiver 1 overall. We were reluctant. I was unwilling. I was ignorant. I was arrogant. I was stupid to not put him here previously. Jamar Chase. Yeah, we're going to have Jamar Chase ahead of Justin Jefferson. And my God, some of my Jamar Chase takes last offseason look horrendous. Last offseason, I was out here telling people to go through and trade Jamar Chase for CeeDee Lamb, which sounds disgusting at this time, as Jamar Chase has come out and put up possibly the best rookie wide receiver season of all time. And I cannot wait to see him in the Super Bowl against the Los Angeles Rams and Jalen Ramsey and see what happens. I mean, this is a wide receiver that came out and was dominant. Of course, he was an elite level wide receiver prospect coming into the NFL. We've all heard it by now. Everybody and their mom said it over and over and over again. You probably heard it every single day last offseason that Jamar Chase in 2019 at LSU, which I got to see him play live. Let me flex on everybody, as we have to do every time we bring up Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Joe Burrow, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that 2019 offense. We got to see him play live at Texas. I mean, they put a beat down on us. Regardless, ton of fun that game. Here, Jamar Chase that season was more productive than Justin Jefferson with his receiving yards as well as his touchdowns at a younger age. Now, everybody has heard that, but what is so impressive about Jamar Chase is, let's just look at this full-blown breakout. Let me pull up this game log. Now, of course, I don't want to focus in on such a small sample. I don't want to just look at the playoffs, as if you're just looking into the playoffs, you are going to make some rash decisions, because a 3-game playoff stretch shouldn't mean as much as a 17-game regular season. Okay, please don't think it does. But still, so far in the playoffs here, 116, 109, 54 receiving yards. I mean, to end the season, you had him come out with 266 receiving yards against the Chiefs. I mean, that was his second game with over 200 receiving yards his rookie year. The best rookie season of all time for a wide receiver. And he was an elite level prospect coming in. And the difference between him and Justin Jefferson at this point is the fact that Jamar Chase will be playing alongside Joe Burrow for pretty much ever. Where with Justin Jefferson, who's going to be our second wide receiver? I mean, with Jefferson, you love to see the fact that you have a little bit of a larger sample. You've seen the dominance over 2 seasons now. I mean, with Justin Jefferson through the first 16 weeks this season, I don't want to look at just, his overall fantasy points scored, because of course that's just giving him a bunch of credit for being able to stay healthy. But if we look at his points per game, still, he's the wide receiver 4 there with almost 20 points per game. This is coming off a top 10 season his rookie year. A very stable asset. The difference between him and Jamar Chase is, well, Jamar Chase has the better quarterback play. With Justin Jefferson, worse quarterback play, but less competition for targets, as Adam Thielen's another year older. And with Jefferson, we need to stop talking about these guys. Let's go down to 3. A player that has fallen down a ton of rankings as of late. We had A.J. Brown here until we found out A.J. Brown's 24 years old, not 23. So instead, we have CeeDee Lamb, who is still 22 years old at this recording. And I know a lot of people are off of CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is plummeting right now with his dynasty value. And I will agree, maybe at some point CeeDee Lamb was overrated. I mean, going back and looking at some of our Patreon dynasty rankings, halfway through the season, we had CeeDee Lamb in the same tier as Jamar Chase, which is laughable looking back on it. Of course, we have corrected that. If you pull up our overall Dynasty rankings on Patreon, CeeDee Lamb's our wide receiver 7. However, in our Cornerstone rankings, he's going to be wide receiver 3. Now, if you're looking at Lamb, a lot of people are going to be focusing in on the game where he had 1 reception against the 49ers in that first round playoff loss in 2022. Now, I will say, let's please overlook that. It's such a small sample. It's one game. It's legitimately one game. Okay. So I know it's the most recent thing in everyone's mind. I know it's what everybody watched, but still, if we take a step back, this is a wide receiver that did disappoint this season, but he had an elite level prospect profile coming into the NFL. Also someone I got to see play in college, humble brag. And this is someone that was a mid wide receiver 2 in back-to-back seasons at an incredibly young age. If we're looking at the age-adjusted production here from a player like CeeDee Lamb, he's on track to continue to improve in this Dallas Cowboys offense. Michael Gallup is most likely going to re-sign with this team this offseason based on the injury, but based on how late in the season that injury was, I'd be surprised if Gallup was able to make it back within the first month of the season. So you could easily see CeeDee Lamb in a role where he instead is being the wide receiver 1A to Amari Cooper's wide receiver 1B, that is just a clear-cut alpha dominant wide receiver in one of the most productive offenses in the NFL. So I will be willing to bet on the bounce back from CeeDee Lamb. As I've said, if you look at our overall Dynasty rankings on Patreon, we have him as the wide receiver 7, have him behind those veterans, guys like Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Devonta Adams, AJ Brown. But it's still, from a Cornerstone perspective, I think that he's a player that we can build around for a very long time. And going over to our next wide receiver, someone else that has fallen a considerable amount, we're going to have DK Metcalf here. Now, with DK Metcalf, this is an option that I think a lot of people are going to have lower than this. And I will be the first person to say that if Russell Wilson is out of Seattle, yes, DK Metcalf will be falling behind someone like Jalen Waddle for me. Now, I am hesitant to do so because we have seen the elite level ceiling from DK Metcalf before. But you know what? As we go through this, I think I am being very biased with this ranking. I'm going to make a live adjustment, not only to these Cornerstone rankings as we make this video, but also to our Patreon rankings. There's no reason for me to have Metcalf over Jalen Waddle other than me like Metcalf. Metcalf is big. I mean, that's just simpleton thinking, because here you would assume that the quarterback situation probably only going to get worse from DK Metcalf if Russell Wilson leaves. And Miami could actually see an improvement with their quarterback situation. Not to mention that if you're looking at the production that you had this year with DK Metcalf versus Jalen Waddle crushed DK Metcalf. So I apologize. We're going to have Waddle up here. Now with Jalen Waddle, one of the most impressive rookie wide receivers, I did not expect him to have this. Now, I will also say I did not expect that you were going to have Devontae Parker and Will Fuller missing the majority amount of time this year, but you have neither Will Fuller or Devontae Parker guaranteed to be with this team next season, or Mike Gesicki. So if anything, Waddle looks like he could be stepping up into an alpha wide receiver role, consistently getting 10 plus targets a game, with the outside chance that this team makes a play for Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson. Now, I know everybody and their mom is just screaming, they're sticking with Tua, they're sticking with, yes, I understand Brian Flores got fired, but still, we don't know for 100% fact. So I'm going to have Jalen Waddle here for a multitude of reasons at 4, and then we'll drop DK Metcalf down to 5, as Metcalf did take a significant step back in year 2. And I think maybe, if anything, Metcalf is riding a little bit of his value based on the size-adjusted athleticism, which we know we shouldn't be primarily focusing in on at wide receiver, whereas we can do so at running back. So yeah, I think Metcalf has to fall down to 5. And then at 6, we are going to have T. Higgins, who looks like he is going to be the co-alpha wide receiver in Cincinnati. It looks like you're going to have Jamar Chase as the wide receiver 1A, T. Higgins as the wide receiver 1B, where you have Jamar Chase working a little bit deeper downfield, T. Higgins working a little bit more with those crossing routes. I will say, if you look at the touchdown rate for T. Higgins, this is how I think he can actually take a step up this upcoming season. Obviously, still a very young player overall. But if you're looking at the touchdown rate, you would expect a 6'4" wide receiver to be able to just come away with more touchdowns. Like, this is a player that so far through his NFL career has had almost 220 targets and 12 total touchdowns. Now, if we assume that this is a player that can get up to, say, a 10% touchdown rate, which is, I don't want to say conservative, but it's definitely in the range of outcomes. Then from a points per game perspective, you could get T. Higgins to be very similar to a player like Mike Evans, where he has a very stable floor on a season-to-season basis. But remember, with Mike Evans, let me pull up his statistics throughout his entire career, because we've seen, this is a wide receiver since 2014 that is consistent with his volume, however, inconsistent with his touchdowns, which isn't based on the wide receiver. It's based on the nature of the position. And here with Mike Evans, you see that. In year 2, he goes out there, 150 targets, 3 touchdowns. But you want to bet on the ability to come away with those touchdowns based on the frame of the wide receiver. And the following season, off 170 targets, which T. Higgins not getting to 170 targets with a player like Jamar Chase in this offense, but still, maybe he can get to, say, 150. I think it's completely reasonable to assume that's in the range of outcomes. So if we get that spike with his touchdown rate, I think even though T. Higgins won't be close to Jamar Chase with his yards per target or his targets overall, that you could actually still see T. Higgins, kind of turn this into a situation very similar to what we had, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think that's a fair comparison for these wide receivers, looking back at 2019, where you had the potential for both guys to come away with top 10 seasons. So I still love T. Higgins despite the Jamar Chase blow up. And now our next wide receiver, going over to the rookie class now, we got Treylon Burks coming in at wide receiver 7. Now with Treylon Burks, of course, we have not had the NFL draft. Of course, we have not had his landing spot or his draft capital. But unlike the running back position, with these wide receivers, I am a lot more willing to just go out there and say, hell, I don't care too much about draft capital. Of course, there's going to be a massive difference between a wide receiver going within the top 10 picks in the NFL draft and someone going in the late second. And we should be paying attention to that. But if we're looking at a wide receiver being drafted at 25 versus a wide receiver being drafted at 10, I would rather look at the collegiate metrics that we have, understanding that the NFL will value these wide receivers differently than what their fantasy production will line up to be. The perfect example is Henry Ruggs versus CeeDee Lamb. The Raiders deciding to take Ruggs for his field stretching capabilities, even though that was never, and I repeat, ever in the Raiders knew this, translating over to Henry Ruggs having more fantasy production than Lamb himself. But that's beyond the point. With Treylon Burks, this is an elite level wide receiver prospect. I don't care too much about the size of our wide receiver prospects, but he is going to stand in around 6'3", 232 pounds. So you know that once he does hit, you're going to get a very similar ascension to someone like DK Metcalf, with just the community of Dynasty players valuing him as that elite alpha X wide receiver. I think that he is a bulletproof option if you're looking at the college target share and the market share numbers that he had at Arkansas. He wasn't, a player going out there and averaging 150 receiving yards a game, but this Arkansas offense really was not throwing the ball whatsoever. So Treylon Burks was a vacuum soaking up everything in that offense. And with the size, the athletic profile, I think you'd be very excited. And our next wide receiver, almost the complete opposite. Garrett Wilson. Now with Garrett Wilson, I'm going to be excited as well. However, never the wide receiver 1 on his own team. And this is why I am going to have Treylon Burks over Garrett Wilson. But of course, we talk about this all the time. While, pretty much all of our analysis in terms of evaluating these prospects are coming down to looking at spreadsheets, looking at numbers, and just going through and shifting them through the process. At the end of the day, not everything can be based on numbers. You have to, and I repeat, you have to look at the context that these players are playing in. And with Garrett Wilson, that context is king. Very similar to A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf at Ole Miss. Very similar to Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase at LSU. Very similar to Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr. at LSU. You need to look at the wide receiver teammates that these guys have. And Garrett Wilson, played with Chris Olave and Jackson Smith-Njigba. I can't say his last name. The best wide receiver in the draft class next year. He would be the best wide receiver in this year's draft class. So based on just the competition that he had for targets, I'm going to be willing to overlook the lack of complete dominance that Garrett Wilson did not display. And I'm going to be willing to go in and just say, hey, if the NFL is taking him as a top 10 option and he was hyper productive at Ohio State, I'll be fine taking him as well. And now our next wide receiver, potentially my favorite wide receiver prospect, and I thought we were going to be way higher than him on him compared to consensus, but so many people have moved him up their own dynasty rankings that at this point it's kind of like we're neutral. Drake London, love seeing the hype build for Drake London, someone that was more productive than Amon-Ra St. Brown at a younger age. Someone that, while he was multiple years younger than Michael Pittman, was in a similar range with the roles that they had on this USC offense. And he, was productive right away at USC at 17 years old. 17 years old, he was on the field producing on a team that had Michael Pittman and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not to mention that he has that T. Higgins height that we just mentioned. And of course, you can't base your wide receiver analysis on height, on athleticism. We've talked about this for years now, that while yes, size and athleticism matters so much at the running back position at wide receiver, you really want to be looking at production with context. Still, you would rather your wide receiver be the size of Mike Evans, T. Higgins, than him be the size of Rondale Moore. So that's obviously a box that you like being checked off. He looks like he's going to be close to a top 10 draft pick if you're looking at how NFL mock drafts are trending as well. All in on Drake London as we've been all offseason. And now our wide receiver 10 is going to be Devonta Smith. And with Smith here, I think there's going to be a lot changing in Philadelphia. This is a team that has a decent amount of cap space because if you look at the quarterback position, they currently have their starting quarterback on a rookie contract that they took him in the second round. So there's a lot of cap space to be spent in Philadelphia at this moment. Not to mention that this is a team that has multiple first-round picks this year. They have 3 first-round picks in the range where these rookie quarterbacks are supposed to go off the board. They have 3 first-round picks where you're supposed to see Matt Corral and Kenny Pickett go off. Now, of course, those players can slide up as we go through the process. I'm not saying that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to take a rookie quarterback, but I've seen a lot of people just completely believe the head coach. I've seen a lot of people just assume that Jalen Hurts is safe and guaranteed his job in Philadelphia. And y'all know that, I love Jalen Hurts in that 2020 draft class based off his rushing upside in Dynasty. We always said we didn't think he was going to be a great NFL quarterback, but if he started in the NFL, you were starting him in fantasy, and that's why we were drafting him every single time we could in 2020 rookie drafts. Now, going forward, I don't know if Jalen Hurts is the long-term answer here for the Philadelphia Eagles. And this team is definitely going to take a look at those rookie quarterbacks. And if they have one falling to them in the middle of the first round, I think they may pull the trigger on someone like Kenny Pickett. And I am not saying he's going to be an improvement for the overall offense. I'm not saying the Philadelphia Eagles would be better off. But Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, they would be better off. Because here with Jalen Hurts, well, he's a unique quarterback with what he can do on the ground with his legs. At the end of the day, he's never going to be an above average passing option in terms of his passing volume in fantasy for providing for these wide receivers. So I almost think with Smith, you kind of want the Philadelphia Eagles to go out there and find a different quarterback option. And now our next guy will be Brandon Aiyuk at wide receiver 11. Now with Aiyuk, he actually had a great game against the Rams this past week, and he had a strong end to this past season after clearly being in the doghouse at the beginning of the year to start his second season. I don't know why that happened. Then they transitioned Deebo Samuel to be a little bit more of a hybrid player and just had Brandon Aiyuk as that prototypical X-alpha wide receiver and really stopped using George Kittle as a heavy volume tight end. I don't know what Kyle Shanahan's doing. Of course, Kyle Shanahan is unbelievable. Like, if you look at my brain compared to Kyle Shanahan's, I am essentially a goldfish. That's essentially how smart I am to Kyle Shanahan. So I'm not questioning him. I'm just saying I don't understand what he's doing. Now, I will say that our guy, Trey Lance, is going to be starting this upcoming season. And with Trey Lance, I don't think it's going to be fantastic for Aiyuk. Very similar to what we've been saying with Jalen Hurts. Love Trey Lance, as we've said for a very long time in Dynasty Fantasy Football, based on his rushing upside. But I'd be very surprised if this is a team that has the passing volume. So despite Brandon Aiyuk being, a pretty damn good wide receiver through the first 2 seasons of his NFL career, I'm going to have him a little bit lower in these rankings, about to turn 24 as well. And now our next option is going to be Elijah Moore, someone we loved as a prospect coming into the NFL draft. However, the issue is, I mean, just the offense he's playing in. Zach Wilson was a horrendous rookie quarterback. I know a lot of people want to say, oh, well, Trevor Lawrence was bad as well. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, they were all pretty damn bad. And here with Elijah Moore, I mean, what you need to look for is the departure of Jamison Crowder and for this team to avoid taking one of those top end wide receivers. Looking at mock drafts now, I've seen a lot of people mock drafting Drake London to the Jets, Garrett Wilson to the Jets. And if that happens, that will maybe just handicap what you can see from Elijah Moore. However, if this is an offense that can improve, and with the loss of Jamison Crowder, you actually get Elijah Moore to slide over to the slot where he played a little bit more at Ole Miss. I mean, he's that dynamic, very athletic slot wide receiver that was hyper productive in that Ole Miss offense. I think you want to be very excited about a player like Elijah Moore. And then our last guy on this list, actually, we've already gone through our top 12. What I'll do for y'all is I want to kind of give a shout out to 3 players I know we're going to have a lot of questions about. Of course, you can find all our rankings, I mean, going super deep over there on Patreon. But 3 guys we need to discuss: Jerry Jeudy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Rashad Bateman. Yes, I'm going to have Elijah Moore for the time being over Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you're looking at St. Brown compared to Elijah Moore in my full Dynasty Patreon wide receiver rankings, I have Elijah Moore at wide receiver 26, St. Brown at wide receiver 28, because I am certain this Detroit Lions offense, as we've said so many times before, is targeting a wide receiver this year. They are targeting a wide receiver in the NFL draft. To go along with this, I mean, we can look at a player like St. Brown, just going back to college and seeing, hell, I mean, he was outproduced by Drake London when Drake London was a younger wide receiver. He was outproduced by Michael Pittman. Yes, he was able to go out there and draw targets over Khalif Raymond, but in reality, how impressive is that? I'm unsure. I can't answer that question. Jerry Jeudy's going to be in this range because the outside chance you get Russell Wilson, you get Aaron Rodgers, you get Deshaun Watson going to Denver. And Rashad Bateman was someone that flashed as a rookie, but obviously the injury kind of clouds the situation. So Rashad Bateman would be, I mean, definitely behind Jerry Jeudy, definitely behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. But of course, thank you so much for being a part of the flock and supporting the channel. Really hope y'all enjoyed this video. Go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, let me know how stupid I am. Subscribe to the channel. Go join the community that we have building over there on Patreon. You can find those links down below. Thank you again, and I hope you have a great day.